My name is John Miller, and I'm 38 years old. I live in a quiet suburban neighborhood in Omaha, Nebraska with my wife Mary and our two daughters, Emma and Sophia, who are 12 and 10. I work as an accountant at a decent-sized firm downtown, putting in long hours crunching numbers to provide for my family. It was just another typical Thursday night when I came home from the office, tired but happy to see my girls. "Hi, Daddy," they exclaimed, running up to hug me like they always do. Seeing their smiling faces was the highlight of my day. After eating the casserole Mary prepared, I settled onto the couch to watch some TV and unwind before bed. As I grabbed the remote from the side table, something caught my eye. An old shoebox tucked away in the back corner. Curious, I pulled it out and opened it, only to have my world shattered. Inside were dozens of faded letters and photographs, evidence of an affair Mary had over 12 years ago. One letter in particular, the handwriting so itchingly familiar, explicitly stated that Emma and Sophia weren't my biological children. I felt dizzy, like I'd been punched in the gut. The precious family I thought I had was built on lies and deceit. Mary must have seen the look of shock on my face because she rushed over. "John, what's wrong? What did you find?" I couldn't speak, couldn't process this nightmare I was living. Tears welled up as I looked at my sweet daughters, blissfully unaware that their whole existence had just crumbled around me. "Who's the father?" I finally choked out, my voice shaking. Mary collapsed onto the couch, sobbing. "I'm so sorry, John. You have to know how much I love you and the girls. It was just a stupid mistake years ago that I regretted every day since." Her pleas only made me feel more sick. In that moment, everything I knew, everything I built my life around, was destroyed. I stumbled upstairs in a daze, threw some clothes into an old duffel bag, and walked out the door into the crisp night air. Didn't know where I was going. I just had to get away and try to make sense of this living hell my life had become. I must have driven around aimlessly for hours after leaving the house that night. My mind was spinning, memories flashing of a life I thought was real, feeling like a fool for being so blind. When I finally snapped out of my daze, I found myself sitting in a dingy motel parking lot on the outskirts of town. Numb, I stumbled inside and got a room, not even caring about the stained carpet or the cloying smell of smoke. I just needed shelter from the storm raging in my heart. As I dropped my duffel bag on the squeaky mattress, my phone started ringing. It was Mary. "John, please pick up." Her voice cracked through the tiny speaker. I stared at her name flashing on the screen, disgusted by what it represented. Lies, betrayal, my entire life condensed into a sham. I silenced the call and it immediately started ringing again and again. By the 10th call, I snapped. "What?" I shouted into the phone. Mary was sobbing. "John, I'm so sorry. Please come home so we can talk about this. Don't shut me out." "Talk about what, exactly?" "That my life has been one big lie. That my daughters aren't even my own blood." I was seething, all the hurt and anger I'd been bottling up pouring out in a torrent of rage. "I can't even look at you right now. John, please." She kept pleading, but I'd had enough. "Save it, Mary. I need some space to process all this. I don't know what the future holds for us, but I can't be around you or the kids until I figure out who the hell I even am anymore." I hung up and turned my phone off, shutting out the outside world. I was utterly alone, reeling from having the very foundation of my existence shattered. Who was I if not a husband and father? Lying back on the creaky mattress, I stared at the water-stained ceiling, tears streaming down my face as I grieved the death of my former life. The next day, I knew I needed to escape and get my mind off this nightmare, if only temporarily. I went out and splurged on something I'd always wanted, a cherry red 1969 Camaro, a relic from the muscle car glory days. I figured if I was going to start rebuilding my identity, I might as well do it with a symbol of power and freedom. With the Camaro's engine rumbling, I peeled out of that depressing motel parking lot, headed westward onto the open road. I didn't have a destination or plan. Just needed to run, to escape the life I'd once known and find something new, something that was unequivocally mine. I drove for days, the American heartland blurring past in a continuous stream of cornfields and rusty silos. The Camaro's growling engine and the whip of the wind was freeing, but my mind couldn't escape its self-imposed prison of anguish. Finally, I pulled off at some nameless town in the middle of rural Kansas, the type of tiny speck that exists solely for thirsty travelers seeking a cold drink and a fill-up. Stepping out of the car, my stiff legs instantly welcomed the chance to stretch as I ambled into the rundown convenience store. "All need anything else besides gas?" The elderly clerk eyed me suspiciously, his brow furrowing at my aimless, unshaven appearance. I shook my head. "Nah, man, just filling her up." As I stood waiting by the pumps, my gaze drifted to a beat-up old Harley-Davidson parked nearby. Its rider, a grizzled yet friendly-looking biker named Hank, struck up a conversation. "That's a hell of a nice ride you got there," he said, eyeing my Camaro admiringly. "Gonna be turning some heads for sure." Gave a half-hearted shrug. "I guess. Just needed to get away for a bit. Start over almost." Something in my tone must have resonated with Hank. He studied me for a moment before saying, "The open road's got a way of healing a man. You know, after my divorce years back, I took off across the country on this old hog and never looked back." My ears perked up at the word divorce. Here was a kindred spirit who knew the pain of having your world shattered. "My old lady cheated on me too, man. Came home one day, and she'd already took off with that ashole down the street," Hank continued. "Gutted me worse than a buck knife to the chest." I could feel the rawness of his words in my bones. Hank went on to wax poetically about the freedom and clarity of the open road, how it gave him space to grieve and rebuild himself into the man he's become. By the time I climbed back into my Camaro, the stirrings of an idea began percolating in my mind. Maybe hitting the road was exactly what I needed to. Not just to run away, but to find myself anew apart from the lies and wreckage of my past life. So at the next town over, I did something impulsive. I pulled into a rundown auto yard selling every rust bucket and spare part under the sun. The greasy owner's eyes lit up when he saw my cherry Camaro. "How much you want for that sweet ride?" he asked. Before I could second-guess myself, replied, 10 grand. "If you got another set of wheels I can take on the road instead." The owner cocked a mischievous grin. "I think I got just the thing, mister." That's how I traded in my shiny modern-day American muscle for an rugged 1980 Harley-Davidson motorcycle, not too different from Hank's. Obnoxious and impractical, but liberating in the most wonderfully unhinged way. Pulling onto the highway, feeling the power of the Harley rumbling beneath me, I laughed like a madman unshackled from all societal expectations of who I was supposed to be. My future may have been uncertain, but for once it was entirely my own to discover. After weeks on the road, I began to crave human interaction and a break from my solitary journey of self-discovery. Fate seemed to answer when my bike broke down outside a ramshackle truck stop diner in rural Texas. Engine trouble. A brusque voice made me jump. Turned to see a weather-beaten waitress eyeing me over her cigarette. She looked about my age, though the weariness etched on her face aged her beyond her years. I nodded sheepishly. Looks like it. You know any good mechanics around here, Miss Janice? She replied flatly, ashing her cigarette. And if you're stuck waiting on Earl to fix that piece of junk, might as well come on inside for some pie and coffee. I couldn't argue with that logic, so I followed Janice into the dimly lit diner that smelled of stale grease and disinfectant. Taking a seat at the counter, I watched as she moved with the mechanical efficiency of someone who'd worked this mismo job for far too long. Where you headed, stranger? Janice drawled, plunking a piping hot cup of diner sludge in front of me. I shrugged non-committally. Nowhere in particular, just writing, trying to clear my head after. My voice trailed off, even to this blunt, weather-worn waitress. The shame of explaining my situation felt too raw. But Janice seemed to read between the lines. Woman trouble, she said matter-of-factly. When I didn't protest, she snorted derisively. Typical goddamn story, ain't it? Either she cheats on us decent fellas or she takes us for everything we got. Emboldened by her gruff understanding, I opened up about Mary's infidelity and how it shattered my perception of my entire life. As I spoke, that molten rage and hurt bubbled back up, feeling just as visceral as those first fevered days on the road. For her part, Janice listened impassively, nodding along as she refilled mugs and carried plates of artery-clogging diner food to locals bellying up to the counter. Sugar, the day we wives and mothers start getting what we truly deserve is the damn day, she said, after I finished unburdening my soul. You think you're the only one whose husband wandered off chasing a younger piece of tail behind your back, or who had to raise babies alone while Mr. Wonderful drank and gambled away every last penny. Janice's eyes bored into me, her pain and sacrifice simmering behind the callous exterior. Her anger quickly dissipated though, replaced by a weary shrug. That's just life, darling. We do what we gotta do to keep putting one foot in front of the other, kids or no kids. Her resigned words hung heavy in the air. Even in my grief, I felt a pang of embarrassment for my male self-pity. What did I know of true struggle compared to the Janices of the world, the resilient women who endured and pressed on despite todas las injusticias? When Earl the mechanic finally had my bike working again, I went to settle up my tabs with Janice. For what it's worth, you've been through some shit, I acknowledged. Not sure if the road will give me all the answers, but it's the path I got to walk for now. For once, Janice cracked a melancholy smile. Just don't let it be the only path, sugar. Sometimes we gotta make our own way home again too. Her words would linger in my mind for many more miles to come. For now though, just had to keep riding, chasing that elusive sense of identity and purpose. After my grounding encounter with Janice, I kept pushing westward, drawn by the boundless desert landscapes and a yearning for perspective. Maybe out there in the vast nothingness, I could find the answers and rebirth I craved. I'll never forget the first time I laid eyes on the Grand Canyon. Pulling up to the South Rim outlook, killed the Harley's engine and was instantly enveloped in a deafening silence. As I took in the majestic, sprawling beauty laid out before me, I felt completely insignificant and yet strangely at peace. Breathtaking, is it not? Turned to see an older Indian man with a warm smile and eyes that sparkled with wisdom beyond his years. Something about his gentle demeanor put me at ease. Yeah, it really is, I replied softly, barely able to find the words. I'm Ravi. Please, join me for tea. He gestured to a small camp stove and tin cups set up nearby. I obliged, eager for the company. As we sipped the spiced chai, Ravi studied my weathered appearance inquisitively. You seem a man adrift, my friend, burdened by something profound weighing on your soul. Before I could even consider how to respond, the entire story came tumbling out, Mary's infidelity, the paternity bombshell, my life unraveling into ashes around me. Words I hadn't been able to voice in months flowed freely. When I finished, Ravi processed my tale in thoughtful silence. Then, he began to speak about the cyclical nature of life, pain and rebirth. How every seeming ending is also a beginning if we open our eyes to the possibilities. The Grand Canyon you see before you was not formed in a day, or even a millennia, he explained calmly. It was carved ever deeper with each relentless surge of the mighty Colorado River. Such is the gradual work of finding oneself after a fizzle. I listened intently, finally feeling heard and understood on a level Mary nor anyone else could provide. Ravi described his own journey of shedding identity, including leaving his corporate career after a health scare forced him to reevaluate his priorities. We are not defined solely by our relations or achievements, but by our innermost values, wisdom, and sense of purpose, he said sagely. Your path forward will be an excavation, chipping away at the ingrained traumas to unearth your core truth. Ravi's soulful words were like a cleansing balm after weeks of untethered angst and anger. Realized in that moment how unproductive and empty my aimless roaming had been up until now. As dusk fell over the vast canyon expanse, I felt an overwhelming wave of clarity and renewal wash over me. My road had been one of forging a new centeredness, of carving out the negative spaces inside to make room for growth. The next morning, I thanked Ravi profusely and prepared to say goodbye. But the wizened nomad simply smiled that warm, knowing smile. Our journeys are eternal, my friend. Though our paths will diverge, they will cross again when you need perspective most. Until then, look inward and seek the truths that will sculpt your rebirth. His words would prove prophetic in the days and years ahead, but in that moment, I felt an unprecedented sense of hope and purpose that overshadowed the lingering hurt over Mary's betrayal. Straddling my bike, I eyed the open road stretched out before me, leading to new discoveries. I finally knew which direction to point my handlebars. It was time to head home. A different man than when I'd left, but whole once more. The journey back home was a quiet one, just me and the endless blacktop ribboning through the American heartland. But this time, the solitude felt meditative rather than burdensome. As the familiar sights of my hometown came into view, a sudden nervousness gripped me. So much had changed internally. What if I was the only one? What if Mary and the kids just saw the same lost soul who had fled all those months ago? I needn't have worried. The moment I pulled into the driveway, the front door flew open, and my girls came barreling out, eyes shining with ecstatic smiles. Daddy. They mobbed me instantly, small arms wrapping around my legs as I dismounted the bike. In that moment, kids will be kids no matter the circumstances. All they cared about was having their dad back in their lives. Mary emerged slowly, hanging back with a hesitant look. The sight of her still sent a pang through my chest, but the bitterness had dissolved into resigned acceptance during my travels. "Welcome home, John," she said softly, making no move to approach. I've missed you." I gave her a somber nod, running a hand over our daughter's tousled curls. "Let's talk inside." Shooing the girls off to play, Mary and I settled onto the old creaky porch swing where we'd whiled away so many warm summer evenings before everything fell apart. An uneasy silence stretched between us. Finally, Mary spoke up, her voice cracking with remorse. "I know an apology can't undo the devastation I've caused our family, but I need you to know how scared and alone I feel without you, John. These last months, I don't even recognize myself anymore." I could hear the raw emotion burning beneath her words, and it shook me. This wasn't the same aloof, unfaithful woman I'd left behind. The Mary sitting before me was humbled, awash in shame and regret. "Why, Mary?" I asked simply. Despite all my soul-searching, that was the one question I'd never found an answer for. She was quiet for a long moment before responding. "I wish I had an excuse beyond being selfish and taking you for granted. The truth is, I was lost and made unforgivable mistakes that I'll regret until the day I die." Mary went on to describe the spiral of insecurity and detachment that led her astray, leaving out no ugly details. It was clear she'd done some soul-searching of her own while I was gone. When she finished, I let out a weary sigh. As much as her betrayal still stung, I couldn't hide behind self-righteousness any longer either. "What you did was unforgivable," I said flatly, "but we're both at fault for letting our family rot from the inside out. Maybe getting torn apart like this is what we needed to wake the hell up." For the first time in forever, Mary and I actually talked about our dreams, our regrets, our hopes for salvaging the shattered pieces of our lives together if we committed to building something better. It was impossibly difficult, messy and blunt in a way most couples never experience. But it was also the catalyst we needed to wipe our slate clean, to make the choice to fight for our kids and what we still had together. Because no matter how deeply I had found purpose on the open road, I finally understood that my path would forever be intertwined with the family I loved. Maybe Ravi was right. The excavation of my inner truth had only just begun. But thanks to Janice, Hank, and the other souls who imparted their wisdom during my travels, I was finally equipped with the tools to chisel away. Would recommitting to Mary and rebuilding our marriage be easy? Hell no. But I owed it to everyone involved to try creating a new identity as a reborn father, partner, and provider. One rebuild from the bottom up with radical honesty. As the night drew to a close and the kids were tucked into bed, Mary and I embraced for the first time in what felt like a lifetime. We clung to each other tightly, drawing strength from the profound love that still endured despite all our transgressions. There on the porch swing, surrounded by the familiar sights and smells of home, I finally knew profound peace. My battered soul had been reforged by the open road into something stronger, ready to face the hard road ahead with Mary, ready to become the man I had still only glimpsed during my travels. It wouldn't be a straight path by any means, but at least now I had purpose fueling each mile forward into the journey of life that was mine to write. All right, everyone, I hope you enjoyed following John's powerful journey of self-discovery and healing after experiencing one of life's most devastating betrayals. As we saw, the path to finding oneself and regaining purpose is never easy. It takes courage, perseverance, and embracing life's trials as catalysts for growth. But the greater reward is getting to that point of inner peace, where we become reborn into our truest, most centered selves. So as you go about your own daily lives and face inevitable hardships, I encourage you to ask, what might this obstacle be revealing about who I really am at my core? How can I use it as fuel to excavate my authentic identity? If John's story resonated with you, or if you have your own perspective to share, I'd love to hear it. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to the channel, give us a like, share our story, and I'll see you all again very soon.